Welcome to the Family Business Show. I'm John Broons, and today I have a very special guest, Nika Ananai from Lagos in Nigeria. And Nika's family business is DPL Constructions, and it's been around for a number of years. Nika, how many years has the business been around? And tell us how it got to be here today, please.
Thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure to be here. DPL Construction has been around for 30 plus years. My parents started off the business when I was a baby. My dad was a young doctor at the time. He was 26, and my mum was a young teacher. But they couldn't afford the quality of life, the standard of living they wanted for me and their nuclear family at the time. So Dad spotted an opportunity to supply medical consumables to teaching hospitals and to medical labs across Nigeria. And so he initially started doing this alongside practicing medicine as a young doctor, but soon enough, the income he was getting from this side business became overwhelmingly, more significant than his paycheck as a doctor. And about 3 years in, stopped practicing medicine and started doing this full time with a business partner. His business partner is also a medical doctor. And so up until about 1999, the business was focused on supply of equipment and supply of consumables. In 99, Nigeria transitioned from military rule to democracy. And in that transition, came out, government was more focused on economic development, healthcare, infrastructural development, education and things like that. And it opened up a host of opportunities for DPL Group, where DPL then started looking into designing and constructing hospitals. And so now today, the medical aspect of our business is really completely understated, and we're really a fully fledged construction company. We've built stadiums, schools, roads. We're now positioned in the oil and gas field, but primarily in Nigeria. So that's DPL Construction.
And you grew up and studied in the UK. So from an education point of view, did you go to university, and how much time did you spend back in Nigeria while Dad was working there?
Yeah, so I was actually in Nigeria up until age 9, and we moved from, my mum, my brothers and I moved from Nigeria to the UK, because at the time it became quite unsafe and the quality of education wasn't as great, it wasn't what my parents desired for us. So it was a difficult decision that my parents came to, where we had to move. Luckily, we were all citizens, or all of us were born in the UK, including my parents. So we had a passport to stay in the UK. And my dad, the initial intention actually was for him to move as well, but he couldn't find any opportunities that were as exciting in the UK as back in Nigeria. So he was 1 foot in, 1 foot out, would come and visit us from time to time. And so it was my mum, my brothers and I in the UK. And so I went to high school in the UK. I went to university in London. I attended UCL, University College London, where I studied economics. And yeah, so, but all the while we would come back home for holidays to visit, spend more time with Dad, Christmas, Easter, summer. So I probably spent maybe 6 weeks a year back in Lagos. But it was a strange experience because I felt like I didn't quite fit in Lagos. I'd left at age 9, so I didn't have that many friends. I had family, I had cousins and things, but I didn't have that many friends. I always felt a bit like an outsider. And equally in the UK, I felt like an outsider as well. So it was always like, I didn't quite fit in anywhere. But honestly, looking back at that experience of feeling like the odd one out actually has been a great blessing for me, because there's no environment that I'm thrown into where I I'm used to feeling, so to speak, uncomfortable and bonding with people that don't look like myself. I'm used to understanding that actually the labels we place on ourselves are just that. They're labels, they mean nothing. At the end of the day, John and Nika are humans and we all have fears, aspirations, dreams. And so when we take away all those labels, I am this, I am that, you are this, you're that, really, we're more similar than we are different. So um, went to university. After uni, I worked at Deloitte in London in corporate tax international for 3 years. And I qualified as a chartered accountant there. And I loved my time at Deloitte. It was just, I had so much fun, met so many incredible people. I loved the culture of the organization. I loved the learning environment, but the work was just not my passion. And so I remember it was about 6 months before I would qualify as a chartered accountant. I was just getting really restless. And I remember having a conversation with my dad that this isn't really where I see myself in the long term, but I don't know where I see myself in the long term. And I'm thinking of coming home to shadow you just for a few months. I'll take some time off work for a year and I'll come home to Nigeria for 3 months and I'll go traveling for a few months. I was going to apply for my MBA at London Business School. Just take some time out to discover who Nikia was. That was the plan. And so I came back home, I believe it was September 2011. 3 months into it, I wasn't leaving. I actually then slowly sold my car in the UK, got a tenant in my flat in London, just slowly. It was just this gradual shift where it was then like, no, I'm staying in Nigeria. And then I set up our family office to manage our family's investments. And I just really loved the entrepreneurial culture in Nigeria. It was very different from the corporate culture I'd been exposed to in the City of London. And bear in mind that, like I said, when we moved to the UK when I was 9, my dad was in Nigeria. So this is 16 years later, right? Yes, we saw him, but my dad and I hadn't actually spent that much time together as an adult child. So working with him in the business was like this renewed, it was just new experience of getting to know him as an adult. And we had so many like similarities and we would just have a laugh. Honestly, it was just in meetings, we would just have an amazing time together. And I was like, this is actually what was missing in Deloitte was I have a passion for who I'm working with. I have a passion for what it is I'm doing. And I have a passion for the environment I'm in. And so, yes, that's how I got slowly entrenched into the family business. And now here I am 9 years later and I'm not going anywhere.
So when you came into the business, and it was just going to be for 3 months, obviously there was a comfort. There was also a respect that was built reasonably quickly and a trust for your skills and your expertise. Did you have a mind to learn things or to change things, or where was your perspective? Because you're coming into a place that you could have been seen as attempting to usurp power even. How did that transition?
My perspective initially, I wasn't really sure what my perspective was because it was really 3 months in, I was like, I'll extend my career break by another year. So it was still like, I'm only here temporarily. But eventually I did have a perspective of slight arrogance of I'm here to change things. I know better than you all. I know how to modernize and professionalize. I'm the girl from Deloitte and I'm the chartered accountant who went to university in the UK. I would never say these things, but that was definitely my mindset was they have a lot to learn from me. And sure, I had a lot to impart because of the experiences I had, but the latter part of your question, I didn't catch that part for probably 5 years. It was years in, I realized actually I have a lot to learn from them because I don't actually know the culture, the business culture locally. I can't negotiate with suppliers, for instance. There's so much. I don't know how to go to government and win contracts. I don't, there's so many things that I had to really learn from people. And so it was a very humbling process, and a humbling perspective. And actually, I found that the more humble I was, the more willing people were to learn from me as well.
What a wonderful balance. But you said it took 5 years. That must have been a very hard 5 years.
I mean, yeah, it was five. I remember the first 5 years I was very frustrated because it's like I would come up with all these ideas and Dad, this is what we need to do, and this is what we need to do. And it was either this is not the way we do things around here, or yeah, we can do that. But there was no real buy-in. So it was a frustrating period where I felt like all my heart and soul was in the business. I was working around the clock, Monday to Sunday, traveling short notice, and but it was like, what's the impact of all my ideas on the business? I want to see this business catch up with the rest of the world. I want to see this business become modern.
How did
But
you how did you communicate with your dad? Did you have conversation with him about a long term? Am I here long term, or do you want me here long term, or was it just I'm here and use me while I'm here and I'll get a salary and where do I fit? Was there a conversation about where you ended up in the business?
we would have conversations, but conversations that lacked context. So we would have conversations just in random threads. Like he would just say passingly, like, this business is what you and your brothers will inherit, and and allude to the fact that he desires a multi-generational business. But we never had the circumstances in which I came into the business, like I explained, was really casual and informal, and we never really had an explicit conversation about my role as I came in, my role, his expectations into the future. I had to almost forge find my purpose within the system. So those 5 years were years of self-discovery. I mean, initially I was everywhere. I did everything. I attended like almost every meeting, procurement, you name it. But soon enough, I learned that firstly, my skills and my gifts were not being put to use effectively. My time wasn't being put to use effectively. And I was just reaching burnout. And I had to choose my focus. I had to choose what I was most passionate about and what I was most competent at. And I soon learned that I had a flair for strategic HR, strategic finance, and processes. I'm really much behind the scenes as opposed to on the front line. And so I designed the family office in such a way that the family office, our investments, a lot of them are not listed stocks and shares and bonds and things like that. A lot of our investments are actual private companies onshore in Nigeria, so almost like venture capital. And a lot of those companies, we don't have any managerial responsibility. We're just investors. Sometimes we take on board seats and we provide strategic direction. And so I changed the mandate almost of the family office to render strategic services to its investee companies, including the operating business. So it was really, it was difficult because I was coming from an environment of Deloitte, right? Where job description, appraisals, biannual appraisals, expectation setting, corporate, direction for the year, departmental direction for the year. I had a mentor, a coach, and it was just extremely structured, but I faced, coming into the family business where it wasn't like that. And I had to create some semblance of structure that worked for me.
You also, you've mentioned early on you went across to England with your mum as a kid. Siblings, you've mentioned brothers. When your dad you've had a conversation about multi-generational, long-term business. How does that fit, and where do your brothers fit in the business?
So till today, it's just myself and dad that are every day in the business. So my brother's younger than myself. The brother next to me, he's also in Lagos. He works in oil and gas, but he also has his own business that he does on the side. And then my youngest brother is in London. He works in private equity. But we definitely, they're all involved in the business in terms of strategic decision making. So any new investment, we will all either jump on Zoom or jump on a WhatsApp call and talk through it and submit like all our ideas. So we very much have a partnership in a very collaborative. The only person that's really not as involved is mum, because she's not really business inclined. But yeah, they, for now, they don't really, haven't expressed the desire to work in the business, but if should they want to, they're more than open to. There have been conversations about my youngest brother taking some time off work because he wants to go study an MBA in the US. And so he was going to take up a couple of months before that to come to the family business and shadow like what I went through when I first moved back, and work a little bit with the family office and things. So yeah, I mean, we've been very loose with the family business. My dad, even when all the time we were in the UK, he'd never said to any of us, I want you to work in the business. So there we all went off in our directions, you know, pursuing our careers out in the UK. And it was just by circumstances that I got to this frustration level where it was like, let me come home and see what you're doing. Never envisaged that I would be here almost a decade later. Never, because my life was in the UK. All my best friends were in the UK. I would come home, but like I said, I felt like I stuck out here. So, you know, it's just amazing to a lot of my friends still like message me. Like I still received messages yesterday because it's my birthday. And they're like, I'm amazed that you're still there. Like, I remember when you used to talk about Nigeria when we were in high school, but how much you just didn't love it, how much you felt you fit in better in the UK than you fit in there. And I was like, yeah, I'm amazed as well. But, you know, where passion meets purpose is.
Okay. So, got a picture of the business. It's a large construction firm, large construction contracts. You have other family members that are outside of the business. Dad's still very much involved in the business. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face, or your dad might have had to face without you here, or some of the challenges that the rest of the family might have felt in the last 20 years? So time when you were at home and then you went away and now you've come back, and some of the challenges.
I think it was quite a heavy cross to bear for him, all the while when we were not around, and he had to shoulder on so much emotional responsibility whilst being a leader and not having his family nearby. And also the business environment here is quite tough. It's quite volatile. The exchange rate is like a yo-yo. And so difficult business conditions in terms of getting bank financing, which interest rates at the moment are about 26%. Loans are, you'd be lucky to get a 3-year loan. Usually it's a year to 2 years. And when you're thinking of construction, right, capital intensive, importing equipment, things like that. So the stress of ensuring that the business has sufficient liquidity to repay loans and things like that has been a huge burden on the family business. And a lot of our clients historically have been government. Government here are notorious for not paying on time, as at when due. So we've had seasons of high stress, to put it, you know. The impact on the family, honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, about how never has there been a season where the difficulty in the business has pulled us apart. And I was reflecting on it, and I think it was the values and the way our parents raised us, because we were so far removed from the front line all the way in the UK. Firstly, I didn't understand or know the extent of the size of the business all the while I was in the UK. I was just studying, I was just, working. It was until I moved back to Nigeria and I was like, oh, okay, wow, we have a whole construction company with thousands of people working here. Okay, and lots of equipment. Oh, I did not know that. And so our parents brought us up extremely humble. They brought us up to be very grateful for what it is we have. And they brought us up to always seek to improve the lives of people around us. And so with that mindset, even when we went through seasons of difficulty in the business, that the business never defined us. It was, a source of our livelihood, but we valued the relationships of the five of us above, the business. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm hearing that even though you were in the UK and there might have been tough times that the business was going through, you didn't really notice it. But did your mother have a concept of it? Do you think that mum, who was looking after you and your two brothers, would have been connecting with your dad while you were at school and having conversations in support? How do you think mum and dad managed that for you to have such a lovely level education time?
Mum was the director of the company and would sign documents and things, and she was involved in some decision making, but she really deferred to dad, to his judgment, and he was really the main person in the business. I suppose, I'm not actually sure. I'm sure they would have had conversations and she would have been a listening ear to him. I'm not honestly sure how that would have looked like at the time, but we were blissfully unaware as children.
Do you think that would have been a bit of a challenge if you had been grown up in Nigeria with the business as volatile and the environment as volatile as you mentioned?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how being on the ground, what that would have been like, because it's a small business community where people speak a lot, right? And I think it would have been a lot more challenging for us as children to, to not grow up with a sense of entitlement, where you're in this small community where everyone's talking about how amazing, this person, this business figure is. They have strong, they have strong personalities in the business community and they're revered and things. But we were really divorced from that. So we had, so to speak, normal lives and desired to be independent, to be productive, to, our desire was never to come into the business and, what's the word, to extract from the business what we could, or to be associated with the business for the social bragging rights it provided, if that makes any sense. So we, growing up in our little bubble, was just, the conversations with our parents was just how like typical Nigerian parents, why didn't you get an A? Which course? Which course are you doing at university? You must take your education extremely seriously. Which big companies do you want to work for? That was always our conversations at home.
Has Dad ever talked about some of the challenges that he faced while you were away? Have you had an opportunity to talk about some of the tough times?
In passing, so communication is not our strongest point. But in passing, he has mentioned about how lonely it was those years when there was no one else with him. And he found a solace when I came into the business. And finally, there was a family member that was passionate about business, right? So he always felt like mum was it wasn't really her thing. She's into voluntary work and into ministry work in church, and she really wasn't passionate about business. So to finally see someone else in the family be really passionate, understood, empathized with, you know, both the aspirations of him and the pain and struggles was a huge relief for him.
Okay. You've recently become involved in the world of family firms and family businesses, and to use the term next gener, you're one of the next generation. How much have you learned in the last 6-12 months about the way families in business operate, and how much do you think you still need to learn or to put into practice maybe inside your own organisation or with your own family?
I've learned a lot in the last 6 to 12 months, particularly about how families, similar life stages as ours, and businesses, similar, you know, development phases as ours, how they operate and how next gens can integrate effectively into that. Really, a lot of my work I spent on how the next gen discovering themselves, how that impacts on the family business effectively. So I really do believe that discovering your life purpose as an individual, discovering your purpose as a family, discovering your purpose as a family business, the three linkages really does steer the family enterprise on a good path towards sustainability. I'm sorry, you can probably hear my children shouting.
No, this is the wonderful thing about today and the opportunity that we have having this conversation. No, well, I really like that, the culture and the values and finding yourself and having alignment with the family and the business all together. And I hear that very truly, and I feel comfort in that for you. Some tips maybe to other next geners that will be joining or want to join or may not want to join their family in business. Have you got some tips and ideas for some of the people that will be listening?
So when you join the family business, it's very different from when you join a corporate, because there's a lot of emotions in a family business. So one has to learn to be emotionally intelligent and demonstrate empathy is what I would say. So you're working with your loved ones who are from a different generation and have a different style of doing things. And so quite often as millennials or younger generation, we love instant feedback. We love praise, but a lot of baby boomers are not, they're not wired that way to give feedback or give praise. And a lot of the time it can lead to frustration of the next gen, where it's like no one appreciates what I'm doing around here, especially when you layer on top of, when you do give your ideas, they're, so to speak, rejected. I think we just have to be really empathetic and put ourselves in the shoes of the founder or the founding generation, and truly feel their pains, truly feel their aspirations, and see things through their eyes and interpret their actions through that lens, as opposed to automatically internalizing a no as a rejection, because it's not a rejection. That's one. Another is boundaries. I started off in our family business as a single girl. I wasn't in a relationship at the time. A year in, I met my husband. About a year in that, we were married. And then a year after, I had a child. And 2 years later, I've got another one. So there's been significant life changes in the last 9 years for myself. And the circumstances under which I was able to work as a 25-year-old is very different from today. And so it took me, by doing that, I had to be firm on boundaries and express those boundaries to my loved ones on both sides, to my parent, my dad, and to my husband. So this is what, these are the parameters under which I'm prepared to work. This is what I can handle, rather than just going with the flow and quietly, stomaching some what's the word, um, unhappiness about the way the working culture. Because for us, we're a construction business, and so at any given point, practically 7 days a week, there's activity going on, and there's there are meetings every day, and being told just with 45 minutes notice on a Saturday that there'll be a meeting halfway across town just cannot work for me as a young mum. And so I had to be very explicit about, these are the boundaries. I will need notice. Meetings on weekends, I can make time available, but it shouldn't be an expectation that I will be there, because I may not be available to be there. So those are the two that I would say, and also be patient. A lot of the time we come in wanting to be the heroes and to give all these great ideas, but we have to be patient and remember that there's a perspective that the founder has that is also valid. They built up the business from scratch and have been through a lot of hard times. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It really isn't, especially in tough environments like in Nigeria and in Africa. And so they do have some validity to their perspective. Our world, and so do we, but it's really about listening to them and learning from them, because a lot of the time we don't listen to hear, we listen to respond.
Very true. That's great wisdom. When you think, if I mention the word education to you, the field of family business is still reasonably new. It's not a subject taught at school. Where do you go to get your family business education?
Education. Oh, so I've been educated in this field in piecemeal, in little, from books, from thought leaders on the space, autobiographies from insiders, training events from associations like Fox and FFI, and courses like through FFI. But locally in Nigeria, there are no family business courses, absolutely none. And so a lot of the courses I would attend were international in the US or in the UK. And there's some great resources online as well, some associations that have blogs and things like that that I follow. But really, I think it's about, if you have a desire to learn about the space, you will learn. It can be difficult because you have to get the information in different pieces. But I'm subscribed to industry networks locally, so Construction Network, we're members of, Institute of Directors, members of, YPO, members of. So within those different communities, in pieces, I get help in terms of leadership, in terms of industry specific issues, and in terms of family business specific issues.
Okay, this has been fantastic. How do you see, say, the next 5 years?
It's really difficult to have clarity right now with the way COVID
maybe
is.
It's not a fair question because the world is still a little bit messy, and it's just a hangover question from past interviews. I think probably, Nika, that I would like to thank you very much for sharing with us today. Really, it's been a wonderful time for me to meet you and connect with you and converse with you. So I want to thank you very much for sharing time with us. And I want to say thank you to those people that are subscribers to the channel. For those of you that are visiting, maybe you want to subscribe, but again, thank you, Nikki, and thanks very much. We'll finish the recording.